After 7 years of fighting to keep her ranch, Victoria Lancaster mistakes the mysterious drifter for just another hired hand, until he reveals himself as the powerful businessman who owns half the town. As these two fiercely independent souls circle each other amid threats from local rivals, will they surrender to the most unexpected danger of all? Falling in love after years of guarding their wounded hearts? Blood trickled from the gash on Victoria Lancaster's palm as she yanked the barbed wire tight against the fence post. She didn't flinch. Pain was just another unwelcome visitor she'd learned to live with since becoming the only woman running a cattle empire in Rimrock Valley. "Ma'am, I could have handled that," young Pedro called from atop his pony. Victoria wrapped her handkerchief around the wound without looking up. "And miss teaching you that a boss never asks workers to do what she won't do herself?" The boy grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. At 12, Pedro had already survived his parents' fever deaths and found a home at the Lancaster Ranch. Victoria would make sure he grew up smarter than the men who'd bet against her after Harrison died. Her prize bull bellowed in the distance, drawing her attention to the herd, 2,000 cattle dotting the golden grassland, all wearing her brand. 7 years of backbreaking work, of fighting bankers who smiled to her face while planning to seize her land, of earning the respect of cowboys who'd initially refused to take orders from the widow. "Storm's coming," Victoria murmured, eyeing dark clouds gathering over the western ridge. "Best head back." As they crested the hill overlooking her sprawling ranch house, Victoria spotted something unexpected. A lone rider approaching from the North Trail. Nobody used that route except rustlers and fools. "Pedro, go on ahead. Tell Ramon we have a visitor." The boy hesitated. "But ma'am." "Now, Pedro." Her tone left no room for argument. Victoria adjusted her wide-brimmed hat and pressed her mare forward, right hand casually shifting to rest near the revolver hidden in her saddlebag. As the distance closed between them, she studied the stranger, tall, lean, with shoulders squared despite trail-worn clothes. Not the usual desperate drifter, then. "This is private property," Victoria called when he was within earshot. "Lancaster land." The man reined his buckskin gelding to a stop. Dust swirled between them as thunder rumbled overhead. "Ma'am." He touched his hat brim, revealing eyes the sharp blue of a winter sky, and something else in them that made Victoria straighten in her saddle. Not threat, but assessment, like he was reading words written on her soul. "Name's Jasper Wade." His voice carried the rasp of disuse. "Heard you might be hiring." Victoria's mare snorted and pawed the ground. "What makes you think that?" "3 hands in the saloon last night. Complained their boss works them harder than any man they ever rode for." His mouth quirked slightly. Figured anyone pushing that hard must be short-staffed. Against her better judgment, Victoria felt herself wanting to smile. Instead, she studied his hands, calloused, capable, and the worn rifle strapped to his saddle. Not fancy, but well-maintained. "Can you break mustangs?" "Yes." "Round up strays in mountain passes where a misstep means death?" "Done it since I was 14. Rain began to fall, fat drops kicking up dust. Victoria made her decision as lightning split the sky. "Bunkhouse is beyond the barn. Ramon will show you. We start at dawn." She turned her horse toward home, then looked back over her shoulder. "And Mr. Wade? On my ranch, everyone earns their keep. Even mysterious strangers." A hint of something, amusement, respect, flickered in those blue eyes. "Wouldn't have it any other way, Mrs. Lancaster." Victoria couldn't have known then how those words would haunt her, or that the quiet man on the buckskin horse carried secrets that would either save her ranch or destroy everything she'd built. That night, as rain lashed the windows of her bedroom, Victoria studied her ledgers by lamplight. Numbers didn't lie even when people did. 3 more months before Harold Turner's bank called in the loan on her northern pastures. 3 months to find money that simply didn't exist. A knock at her door interrupted her calculations. "Enter." Marcus Bailey stepped in, removing his hat. 5 years as her foreman had etched permanent sun lines around his eyes and a perpetual furrow between his brows. "Ma'am, about that new hand." Victoria set down her pencil. "Problem already?" No, ma'am. That's just it. Marcus twisted his hat brim. He's got the wildest stallion in the remuda eating oats from his hand. Fixed the broken wagon Will Ramon's been cursing for a week. And Cook says he speaks better Spanish than most Mexicans. Your point, Marcus? Men like that don't drift, Mrs. Lancaster. They run businesses or, he hesitated. Or what? Or they're running from something. Marcus met her eyes directly. Just saying maybe we should ask more questions before trusting him too far. After he left, Victoria moved to her window. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could see the bunkhouse, a single lantern still burning inside. Marcus was right. Men with Jasper Wade's abilities didn't wander the territory taking odd ranch jobs. So why was he here? The next week answered part of that question. Jasper worked harder than two men, rising before dawn and finishing after dusk. He spoke little but observed everything. The hands began deferring to him naturally, even Pedro trailing after him like a devoted puppy. What troubled Victoria wasn't his work. It was impeccable, but the way he watched her when he thought she wouldn't notice. Not like other men with desire or dismissal, but with curiosity, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. More disturbing still was how she found herself watching him back. On Saturday, Victoria rode into town for her monthly bank meeting. Her stomach knotted with dread. Turner would find some new reason to deny her loan extension. Another week of trying to miracle money from dust and cattle. Rimrock had grown since she'd arrived as a bride 12 years ago. False-fronted buildings lined what had once been a dusty crossroads, and the clash of piano music from competing saloons filled the air. Progress, Harrison had called it before pneumonia took him. Victoria tied her horse outside the bank, noticing how conversations hushed as she passed. Today the sideways glances carried something new. Not the usual mix of pity and speculation, but tension, unease. Jeremiah Holcomb, the bank manager, didn't rise when she entered his office. Mrs. Lancaster, his usual fawning manner had vanished. There's been a development. Victoria remained standing. Regarding my loan? Regarding your new hire? Holcomb removed his spectacles, polishing them nervously. Jasper Wade. An unfamiliar chill ran down Victoria's spine. What concern is my ranch hand to the bank? Because he isn't just a ranch hand. Holcomb lowered his voice. 3 days ago, we received correspondence from Boston, from the attorneys of Jasper Wade Montgomery. Victoria's knees weakened. She gripped the chair back for support. That's impossible. Montgomery is some Eastern investor who's never set foot in Rimrock. So we believed. Yet his attorneys sent instructions, including a description of their client who was coming to personally inspect his investments. Holcomb leaned forward. Mrs. Lancaster, he owns the mortgage on this bank, and the mercantile, and the saloon, and most importantly, the water rights to the stream that runs through your northern pasture. Victoria's mind raced. The quiet man who'd gently taught Pedro to read by lamplight, who'd mended her garden fence without being asked, who looked at her sometimes with a gaze that seemed to reach places inside her long closed off. Why would one of the wealthiest men east of the Mississippi pretend to be a common cowboy? That, Mrs. Lancaster, Holcomb said grimly, is what has everyone in this town terrified. As Victoria left the bank, reeling from this revelation, she spotted a familiar figure across the street, Jasper, emerging from the telegraph office. Their eyes met. For one unguarded moment, she saw something raw and honest in his face before he turned away, mounting his horse with the easy grace that had first caught her attention. Only then did Victoria notice Harold Turner watching them both from the saloon doorway, his face twisted with calculation. Whatever game Jasper Wade Montgomery was playing, she suddenly knew with bone-deep certainty that she wasn't the only one with something to lose. He's lying to you, Harold Turner's voice sliced through the early morning quiet of Victoria's office. He'd arrived unannounced, hat clutched in meaty hands that had never known honest labor. Victoria didn't look up from the breeding records she was reviewing. Most men do, Mr. Turner. Some more aggressively than others. Turner planted his palms on her desk, leaning forward. The stench of whiskey and cologne made her stomach turn. This isn't some game, Victoria. Montgomery wants your land. Always has. Now she met his gaze, noting the bloodshot eyes and desperation poorly hidden beneath bluster. And you don't. I've made no secret of my offers to buy you out. Turner straightened. But I've done it honestly as a businessman. Victoria almost laughed. Is that what you call cutting off my cattle drive routes? Bribing the banker to call in my loans early? Spreading rumors that my cattle are diseased? Color flooded Turner's face. Those northern pastures are wasted on your operation. I could triple your timber profits by clearing the forest my cattle graze in. Victoria stood. I'm aware of your plans, Mr. Turner. Now state your actual purpose here or leave. Turner glanced toward the window, where Jasper could be seen in the corral, working with a spirited black mare that had thrown every other hand who tried to ride her. Montgomery destroyed my brother's business back east. Bought up debts, foreclosed, stripped the assets. His voice dropped. Edward shot himself rather than face the shame. Victoria kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. Was this the man she'd invited into her home? Her life? Why tell me this? Because he does it differently every time. Sometimes he's the helpful investor. Sometimes the silent partner. This time, Turner gestured toward the window. This time he's playing the humble cowboy, winning your trust before he takes everything. After Turner left, Victoria watched Jasper from her window. The black mare now followed him around the corral like an oversized dog, nudging his shoulder affectionately. Her most temperamental horse, tamed in a single morning, just like he was taming everyone at the ranch. The hands who now looked to him first. Pedro, who gazed at him with the hero worship of a fatherless boy. Even Marcus had begun deferring to Jasper's judgment. And if Victoria were honest, even she had begun to, no, if what Turner said was true, she couldn't afford such thoughts. But liars often mix truth with falsehood to make their poison more palatable. She needed to discover which parts of Turner's story were real. That evening, Victoria found Jasper alone in the tack room, carefully repairing a broken bridle. Mr. Wade. She kept her voice neutral. Or should I call you Mr. Montgomery? His hands stilled, but he didn't look up. Figured you'd hear eventually. From the bank manager? Or perhaps from the very worried townspeople who suddenly realize a stranger controls their livelihoods. Victoria stepped closer. Or from Harold Turner, whose brother apparently killed himself after you destroyed him? This Jasper's head snapped up, eyes flashing. Edward Turner died in a hunting accident 5 years ago. I never met the man, let alone ruined him. The vehemence in his voice made Victoria pause. Then why are you here, pretending to be a simple ranch hand when you could buy this entire valley without emptying your pockets? Jasper set down the bridle, rising to face her. In the lantern light, his expression was etched with shadows and something that looked strangely like regret. I was born Jasper Wade in Ohio, blacksmith's son. Montgomery came later, my mother's family name, when I made my fortune in railroads. His voice quieted. 15 years of boardrooms and balance sheets makes a man forget some things. The weight of honest work. The satisfaction of creating something real. So this is, what? A rich man's holiday? Playing at being common? No. Jasper stepped closer, close enough that Victoria could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, smell the leather and sage scent of him. It's remembering who I was before the money, before I became the kind of man who counts his worth in dollars rather than deeds. Victoria fought the urge to step back, or worse, step forward into the warmth his presence promised. Why my ranch? Why Rimrock? Started as business. Your reputation reaches further than you know. The widow who turned a failing ranch into the most successful operation in 3 counties. Something like admiration colored his voice. I wanted to understand how before deciding whether to call in the loans on half the businesses that have been trying to force you to sell below market value. Victoria's breath caught. You know about that? The price fixing? The blocked trails? The accidents that keep happening to your hands? Jasper's mouth tightened. Railroad business teaches you to recognize when the game is rigged. His mouth curved slightly. I don't abide cheats. The implications swirled in Victoria's mind. This man held power over her enemies. Could destroy them with a pen stroke. Could destroy her just as easily. And now? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Now I'm not sure what I want. Jasper's gaze held hers, unflinching. Except that leaving isn't it. The confession hung in the air between them. Honest, unadorned, and utterly terrifying in its implications. Before Victoria could respond, shouts erupted from the yard. They rushed outside to find Ramon pointing toward the northern ridge. Fire! He yelled. The upper pasture is burning. Against the night sky, orange flames leapt from tree to tree, a hungry monster devouring the drought-dry forest. Victoria's stomach dropped. 50 head of prime breeding stock grazed that section. Get the men, she ordered. And the water wagon. As the ranch exploded into frantic activity, Victoria felt a hand on her arm. Jasper's expression was grim. This wasn't an accident. He glanced toward where Pedro was struggling to saddle horses. Not during a drought. Not with the wind blowing straight toward your best grazing land. Victoria knew he was right. This was no lightning strike or careless campfire. Turner, she said, the name bitter on her tongue. Or whoever he's hired. Jasper was already mounting his horse. I'll take the north trail. Try to cut the cattle off before they panic into the flames. That's the steepest route. I know. His eyes met hers, fierce with something that made her heart stutter. Trust me, Victoria. Just this once. As he galloped into the darkness, Victoria realized with startling clarity that she already did trust him. Despite the secrets, despite the lies of omission. Something in her recognized something in him, a matching piece to her own complicated puzzle. And that trust terrified her far more than any fire. Jasper vanished into the night. Victoria stared after him, the orange glow of distant flames painting her face. 15 minutes passed, then 30. The ranch hands assembled with water barrels and shovels, awaiting her orders. Ma'am! Marcus's voice broke through her rising panic. We need to move now or lose the whole North Ridge. Victoria snapped back to herself. Take 6 men up the east trail. Ramon, circle west with 4 more. Start fire breaks 50 yards from the edge. What about Mr. Wade? Pedro asked, clutching the reins of his pony. I'll find him, Victoria said, swinging into her saddle. You stay here with Maria. But I can help. You will help by keeping watch at the house. Victoria softened her tone. I need someone I trust here, Pedro. The boy straightened, pride momentarily outweighing disappointment. Victoria urged her horse toward the north trail, the one Jasper had taken. The steepest, most dangerous route, especially in darkness. The path that would lead fastest to her trapped cattle. Halfway up the ridge, smoke thickened the air. Her horse balked, nostrils flaring in fear. Easy, girl, Victoria soothed, pulling her bandana up over her nose and mouth. Through watering eyes, she scanned the burning landscape. That's when she spotted them. Dark shapes moving through the smoke. Cattle, dozens of them, heading down a narrow ravine that wasn't on any ranch map. And at their head, a rider on a buckskin horse. Relief flooded through Victoria. Then alarm as she realized where the ravine led, straight to Turner's waiting lumbermen, camped just beyond her property line. Digging her heels into her mare's sides, Victoria cut across the hillside. She had to reach Jasper before he delivered her prize breeding stock directly to the enemy. The crack of a rifle split the night. Victoria's horse reared, nearly unseating her. When she regained control, she saw Jasper's mount running riderless along the edge of the ravine. No! The cry tore from her throat. Through the shifting smoke, she caught movement. Jasper was on his feet, pressed against a boulder, returning fire toward a clump of trees where muzzle flashes betrayed the shooter's position. Victoria drew her revolver. 2 riders were emerging from the trees, pistols raised. Turner's men, using the fire as cover for their real plan, ambush. Without hesitation, Victoria fired twice. The first shot went wide, but the second hit its mark. One rider clutched his shoulder, wheeling his horse around. His companion followed, retreating into the smoke. Victoria! Jasper's voice reached her, tight with disbelief. What the devil are you doing here? She urged her horse forward. Saving my cattle. And apparently you. Jasper limped toward her, blood darkening his left trouser leg. Wasn't taking them to Turner, if that's what you're thinking. Then where? Hidden valley on the other side of this ravine. Spring-fed, sheltered. Been scouting it all week. He grimaced, clutching his thigh. Belongs to me or Montgomery, rather. Figured the cattle would be safe there until the fire burns out. Shame washed through Victoria. Even now, she doubted him. You're hit. Just a graze. Those fellas couldn't hit a barn from the inside. Despite everything, Victoria felt a smile tug at her mouth. Can you ride? Done worse. Together they caught Jasper's gelding. Victoria helped him mount, noticing his quick intake of breath as he settled in the saddle. The cattle? She asked. Most were through before the shooting started. 20, maybe 30 heads still scattered up the hillside. Jasper nodded toward the ravine. Get them moving while I hold this position. Turner's men might circle back. Victoria hesitated. You think I can't handle guns out of a hidden valley? For the first time that night, Jasper smiled. A genuine one that reached his eyes. Mrs. Lancaster, I think you could handle the devil himself if he had the poor judgment to cross your path. The smile faded. But I won't risk you getting shot because of me. Not your decision to make, Victoria said firmly, then softened. The cattle need both of us. We'll go together. Dawn found them exhausted but triumphant. The fire had been contained before reaching the main pastures. Most of the herd was safe in the hidden valley Jasper had discovered. And Turner's men had fled when the sheriff's posse arrived, summoned by quick-thinking Pedro. Victoria sat on the porch steps, watching the sun rise over smoke-hazed hills. Jasper lowered himself beside her. His bandaged legs stretched awkwardly before him. Why'd you come after me? He asked quietly. Victoria studied her soot-stained hands. Because I knew you weren't running away. How could you be sure? I couldn't. She looked at him directly. I chose to trust you. Something shifted in Jasper's expression. Surprise, followed by a warmth that had nothing to do with the rising sun. About what Turner said, Victoria raised a hand to stop him. Turner burns my pastures, shoots at my people, and tries to steal my cattle. His words mean nothing. Still, you deserve the truth. Jasper's voice dropped. I did foreclose on businesses back east. Made enemies. Some deserved it. Some didn't. His calloused fingers twisted the frayed edge of his bandage. 15 years of seeing people as ledger entries changes a man. Not for the better. Victoria absorbed this. And now I'm trying to remember how to be Jasper Wade again. The blacksmith's son who valued honest work and looked men in the eye. His gaze met hers, unflinching. The man who might be worthy of a woman like you. The words hung between them, honest and unadorned. Before Victoria could respond, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. The sheriff, followed by a well-dressed stranger whose city clothes looked absurdly out of place in the ranch yard. Mrs. Lancaster, Sheriff Collins called. This here's Judge McAllister from the Territorial Court. Got some news you'll want to hear. The judge dismounted stiffly, eyeing the smoke-stained pair on the porch. Mr. Montgomery? He asked, peering at Jasper. Wade, Jasper corrected softly. Just wait here. The judge nodded, then turned to Victoria. Ma'am, we've arrested Harold Turner. Attempted arson, conspiracy to commit murder, and theft of property. Victoria's eyebrows rose. You found proof. His own men gave him up when we caught them. The judge looked uncomfortable. But that's not why I'm here. We found papers in Turner's office. Forgeries. The water rights to your northern pasture, the ones he's been threatening to cut off, they were never legally his. Victoria's breath caught. What? He falsified the deed 5 years ago when your husband died. Counted on your grief to keep you from examining the paperwork closely. The judge handed her an official-looking document. This restores full rights to you. Backdated with interest for water usage he charged you illegally. As the implications sank in, Victoria felt years of accumulated tension begin to unravel. The constant threat hanging over her ranch gone. The vulnerability that kept her awake at night erased. She turned to share the moment with Jasper, only to find him watching her with an unreadable expression. "Congratulations," he said softly. "You've won." Something in his tone made her heart sink, as if he was already saying goodbye. "You're leaving." Victoria made it a statement, not a question, as she entered the barn where Jasper was saddling his horse. 3 days had passed since the fire. His leg was healing, Turner was in jail, and the cattle had returned to their regular pastures. Best this way. Jasper didn't look up from tightening the cinch. "My attorney arrives tomorrow. Time to stop pretending to be something I'm not." Victoria leaned against a stall door. "And what exactly are you, Mr. Montgomery?" Now he met her eyes, his expression guarded. "A businessman with responsibilities. Investments to manage. Properties to oversee." "Interesting." Victoria kept her voice casual, though her heart hammered. "I understood you to be a blacksmith's son from Ohio who happened to make his fortune." Jasper's hands stilled on the saddle. "Victoria, and here I thought you were a man rediscovering his true self." She stepped closer. "Or was that just another convenient story?" "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." Another step. "Why run now? When Turner's defeated, when the ranch is secure, when we—" She stopped, unable to voice what hung between them. Jasper's eyes darkened with something like pain. "Because it would be too easy to stay. To pretend I belong here." "Who says you don't belong?" "Look at me, Victoria." He gestured to his trail-worn clothes, his calloused hands. "This isn't an act. It's who I was. But it's not who I am anymore. Jasper Wade is a memory. Montgomery is my reality." Victoria felt anger rising, burning away uncertainty. "So you'll go back to your boardrooms and balance sheets? Be miserable counting money instead of being alive doing work that matters?" "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple." Victoria planted herself directly before him. "You're scared." Jasper's jaw tightened. "Careful, Mrs. Lancaster. The great financial baron. Terrified of actually feeling something." Victoria didn't back down. "Easier to hide behind Montgomery than risk being Wade again. Risk caring. Risk losing. You don't know what you're talking about." His voice was dangerous, low. "Don't I? I spent 7 years hiding too. Behind this ranch. Behind my pride." Victoria's voice caught. "The difference is, I'm ready to stop hiding." The silence between them crackled with tension. Jasper's expression softened fractionally. "What are you saying?" Before Victoria could answer, the barn door burst open. Pedro tumbled in, breathless. "Ma'am, riders coming. Looks like Mr. Turner's timber crew." Victoria's head snapped up. "Turner's in jail. His foreman ain't." Pedro's eyes were wide. 12 men, all armed. Jasper abandoned his saddle, reaching for his rifle. "Get the hands. Tell them to arm themselves." As Pedro dashed off, Victoria grabbed Jasper's arm. "You don't have to fight my battles." His smile was grim. "Not yours alone. Not anymore." Outside, the thunder of approaching horses grew louder. Victoria's ranch hands gathered on the porch, rifles ready. Jasper's eyes met Victoria's. "Whatever happens, know this, Wade or Montgomery, either way, I've never felt more alive than these weeks with you." Before she could respond, the timber crew broke into the yard. Their foreman, Stevens, reined in his horse, his face twisted with fury. "Lancaster," he shouted. "Turner's innocent. We know you framed him." Victoria stepped forward. "Turner was caught red-handed, Stevens. Tell your men to stand down." "Not happening." Stevens's hand moved toward his holster. "You and your fancy Eastern friend destroyed a good man. We aim to set things right." Jasper moved beside Victoria, his rifle lowered but ready. 12 against 7 aren't odds I'd bet on Stevens. Wouldn't be so sure, came a new voice. Marcus appeared from the bunkhouse with 5 more hands. Then Ramon emerged from behind the barn with 3 more. All armed, all standing with their boss. Stevens's confidence visibly wavered. Furthermore, Jasper continued conversationally, as the legal owner of the timber contract your men operate under, I'm officially terminating your employment. Confusion rippled through the timber crew. What's he talking about, Stevens? One man called. Jasper stepped forward. Jasper Wade Montgomery, owner of North Star Timber. Your employer. Stevens paled. You're lying. My attorneys arrive tomorrow with documentation. Jasper's voice hardened, including evidence that you and Turner embezzled nearly $10,000 from company funds. Care to explain that to your men? Muttering broke out among the timber crew. Several lowered their weapons, eyeing Stevens with new suspicion. He's trying to confuse you, Stevens shouted, desperation edging his voice. This is about the Lancaster woman. She's bewitched him. Victoria couldn't help it. She laughed, the sound cutting through the tension like a knife. Bewitched? I've been called stubborn, difficult, even impossible, but never magical. Her laughter broke something in the standoff. 2 timber men turned their horses. Then 3 more. Wait, Stevens yelled. You can't just. We can, the oldest woodsman said wearily. I ain't fighting for a thief. He looked at Jasper. We need those jobs, mister. The operation continues, Jasper said firmly. Under new management with fair wages. Anyone who works honest gets treated honest. Within minutes, Stevens sat alone on his horse, abandoned by his men. Marcus and 2 hands escorted him off the property to face charges of conspiracy alongside his boss. As the dust settled, Victoria turned to Jasper. Owner of North Star Timber? You never mentioned that. Would it have made a difference? Jasper asked quietly. Yes, Victoria admitted. I might have been even more suspicious. Unexpectedly, Jasper laughed. A real laugh that transformed his weathered face. Victoria Lancaster, you are the most maddening, magnificent woman I've ever known. Her heart lightened at the sound. Magnificent enough to make you stay? As Wade, not Montgomery. Jasper's smile faded. It's not that simple. My responsibilities can be managed from here. Victoria stepped closer. You own half the businesses in the territory anyway. Why not run them from Rimrock? And your ranch? Your independence. My ranch. My choice. Victoria lifted her chin. Perhaps I'm tired of doing everything alone. Hope and uncertainty warred in Jasper's expression. You deserve someone whole, Victoria. Not a man who spent 15 years losing himself. I don't want someone whole, she said softly. I want someone real. Someone finding himself again. Just as I am. Her hand found his. Perhaps we could find our way together. For a long moment, Jasper stood motionless. Then slowly, he raised her hand to his lips. I'll stay through winter, he said against her fingers. No promises beyond that. Victoria smiled, the first true smile in longer than she could remember. I don't need promises, Jasper Wade. Just honesty. And perhaps, in time, something more. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Not fire this time, but rain. Life-giving rain for parched land too long held hostage by drought. Like the healing rain, something new began to flow between 2 people who had forgotten how to trust, how to hope. Not love, not yet, but its possibility, sprouting like green shoots after the longest winter. And for now, that was enough. Letters arrived every Tuesday on the afternoon stage. Victoria recognized the heavy cream envelopes with their Boston postmark before Pedro could deliver them. Today, 3 such letters sat on her desk, each bearing the Montgomery corporate seal. Autumn had painted Rimrock Valley in gold and crimson. 6 weeks had passed since the confrontation with Turner's men. 6 weeks of Jasper dividing his time between ranch work and business matters that couldn't be ignored. even in his self-imposed exile from Boston society. Victoria hesitated before opening the latest correspondence, remembering Jasper's expression as he'd ridden out that morning to check the high pasture fences. Less guarded now, but still carrying shadows. "Just read them," she muttered to herself, breaking the first seal. The letter was from Jasper's chief attorney, requesting signatures on documents transferring ownership of North Star Timber to a newly formed corporation. Victoria nearly set it aside as routine business until a name caught her eye: Lancaster Montgomery Holdings. Her heart stumbled. Jasper had mentioned no such company. The second letter contained banking instructions for substantial sums being transferred from Eastern accounts to the Rimrock Bank, now under new management after Holcomb's abrupt departure. The third envelope was thinner than the others. Inside, Victoria found a single sheet of paper in flowing feminine handwriting. "My dear Jasper, I've respected your wishes these 3 months, but can remain silent no longer. This sabbatical of yours has the entire board in chaos. Millie Vanderpool is spreading rumors that you've had a breakdown. Edward claims you're secretly establishing a Western Railroad to compete with your own holdings. Only I seem to remember that sad-eyed boy who once told me the blacksmith shop was the last place he felt truly at peace. I won't ask when you're returning, for I suspect I know the answer. Instead, I ask only this: is she worthy of the sacrifice you're making? Does she understand the man behind the fortune? Your devoted sister, Catherine." Victoria stared at the letter, a complicated tangle of emotions rising within her. He'd never mentioned a sister. What else didn't she know about the man she was beginning to? The thundering of hooves interrupted her thoughts. Victoria moved to the window, surprised to see Jasper returning hours earlier than expected, pushing his gelding hard. Behind him rode Marcus, his expression grim. Victoria hurried outside, alarmed by their pace. "What's happened?" Jasper dismounted in a smooth motion he'd perfected over the past months. "Rustlers. Hit the north pasture before dawn. Took 30 head, including the new Hereford bull. Jenkins and his boys found tracks leading toward the old mine," Marcus added, wiping dust from his face. 6, maybe 7 men." Victoria's stomach dropped. The Hereford bull had cost more than she could afford, a gamble on improving her stock. "The hands. Forming up now," Jasper said. "We can catch them before they reach the territorial border if we move fast." "I'm coming with you." Jasper's expression hardened. "No." Something in his tone, commanding, not consulting, kindled Victoria's temper. "I beg your pardon? These aren't ordinary rustlers," Marcus interjected. "Found Watson unconscious, beaten pretty bad. They left this." He handed Victoria a dirty scrap of paper, scrawled in charcoal. "Turner sends his regards from prison." "Turner's hired guns," Victoria muttered. "All the more reason I should. All the more reason you should stay." Jasper cut in, his voice softening. "Victoria, they want you to follow. It's a trap. My ranch, my cattle, my fight." Jasper stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And if something happens to you, what becomes of Pedro? Of all the people who depend on you?" Victoria struggled with fury and the knowledge that he was right. These weren't ordinary thieves. They were men with a grudge, hired to hurt her where it would wound deepest. 24 hours, she conceded finally. "If you're not back by tomorrow sunset, I'm coming after you, trap or no trap." Relief flickered across Jasper's face. He squeezed her hand briefly, then turned to Marcus. "Tell the men to pack light. We ride in 15 minutes. As they prepared to depart, Victoria found herself standing awkwardly with Jasper by the barn. In the 6 weeks since he'd agreed to stay, they'd established a careful friendship. Shared meals, long talks on the porch as sunset painted the hills. Small touches, a hand at her elbow, fingers brushing as they passed coffee cups. But nothing more, both still guarding fragile hearts. Now, facing possible danger, the words they'd left unspoken seemed to fill the air between them. "Be careful," Victoria said finally, hating how inadequate it sounded. Jasper's eyes softened. He reached into his pocket, pressing something into her palm. "Hold this for me?" Victoria looked down at a worn pocket watch. Not valuable, plain tin case, scratched crystal, the inside lid bearing a simple inscription. To J.W. honor in all things. Father. Your father's watch. Victoria's throat tightened. Only thing of his I kept. Jasper's voice grew rough. Seems right that you should have it while I'm gone. The gesture, entrusting her with something so personal, stole Victoria's breath. Before she could respond, he mounted his horse, touching his hat brim in the gesture that had become familiar. See you by sunset tomorrow, Mrs. Lancaster. Then they were gone, 12 men riding hard toward the distant mountains, leaving Victoria clutching a stranger's watch and realizing, with clarity that startled her, that she couldn't bear it if that stranger didn't return. Night fell with no word. Victoria paced the porch until Pedro brought her coffee and a shy smile. Mr. Wade will be back, ma'am, he promised. Victoria ruffled the boy's hair. When did you get so wise? Been watching you too. Pedro grinned. The way he looks at you when you're not seeing. The way you smile different now. Heat rose in Victoria's cheeks. Was she that transparent? Go on to bed, you little gossip. After Pedro left, Victoria found herself opening the mysterious third letter again. Does she understand the man behind the fortune? Did she? The next morning, Victoria woke before dawn from fitful sleep. Hours of pacing followed as she alternated between worry and anger. Why had she let him talk her into staying behind? This was her ranch, her fight. By noon, she'd made up her mind. Saddle my horse, she told Ramon, and pack 2 days' provisions. But Mr. Wade said, Mr. Wade doesn't give orders on this ranch, Victoria said firmly. I do. Just as she finished securing her bedroll, hoofbeats approached. A single rider coming fast. Victoria's heart leapt, then plummeted as she recognized not Jasper but Sheriff Collins. Mrs. Lancaster. The sheriff reined in, his face grave. Just came from the eastern ridge. There was a shootout at the old mine. Rustlers had reinforcements waiting. Victoria gripped her saddle horn, suddenly dizzy. Jasper? The men? 6 wounded. None of ours killed. Thank the Lord. Collins removed his hat. But Wade, or Montgomery, whatever he calls himself, he went after Turner's main gun hand. Chase led into the mine tunnels. And Collins hesitated. There was a cave-in, ma'am. Bad one. 3 men went in to search, but Victoria was mounting before he finished speaking. Get Dr. Winters. Send men with digging equipment. Now. The old mine hunched against the mountainside like a malevolent toad, its entrance half collapsed. Victoria dismounted amid organized chaos. Ranch hands clearing rubble, wounded men being tended by Marcus, captured rustlers under guard. Where? She demanded. Marcus pointed to a narrow opening where 2 men were frantically digging. Second tunnel collapsed. Jasper followed Riley in there. We heard shots. Then the whole thing came down. Victoria shed her riding jacket, grabbing a shovel from a startled ranch hand. Move aside. Ma'am. That ceiling could go any minute. Move. Aside. For 3 hours they dug, replacing exhausted workers with fresh ones, carefully removing timber and stone. Victoria refused to rest, her hands bleeding through torn gloves. When a support beam began to crack, she was the first to brace her shoulder against it, while others secured new timbers. We've broken through, came a shout from the front. Victoria pushed forward, heedless of danger, crawling through the narrow opening they'd created. Lantern light revealed a small pocket where the tunnel hadn't completely collapsed. At first she saw nothing. Then a boot, a leg, a still form half buried under rubble. Here, she cried. He's here. Working feverishly, they uncovered him. Filthy, bloodied, but breathing. Victoria cradled his head in her lap as they carried him out on a makeshift stretcher, her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed. Only when they reached daylight did she see the second body they'd brought out. Riley, Turner's hired gun, dead from a bullet rather than the cave-in. Jasper's bullet, from the pistol still clutched in his hand. As they loaded him into a wagon, Jasper's eyes fluttered open, focusing blearily on Victoria's face. "Told you to stay home," he whispered. Victoria pressed her lips to his dust-covered forehead. "And I told you this was my fight." His cracked lips curved in the ghost of a smile before unconsciousness claimed him again. "Mr. Montgomery requires absolute rest, Mrs. Lancaster." Dr. Winters's tone brooked no argument as he closed his medical bag. 2 broken ribs, a concussion, and that shoulder wound reopened. It's a miracle he survived. Victoria stood beside Jasper's bed in the ranch house's best guest room, watching the shallow rise and fall of his chest. 3 days had passed since the mine collapse, days of fever and delirium where Jasper had called out names she didn't recognize and fought battles long finished. "He will recover fully?" she asked, unable to keep worry from her voice. Dr. Winters's kind eyes assessed her. "The body, certainly. The mind," he hesitated. "He's been through a trauma. Give him time." After the doctor left, Victoria settled into the chair she'd occupied for most of those 3 days. On the bedside table lay the contents of Jasper's pockets. A few coins, a small notebook, and a folded photograph of a middle-aged couple, the man bearing Jasper's strong jawline. She hadn't looked at the notebook. Some privacies remained sacred even between whatever they were to each other now. "Snooping, Mrs. Lancaster?" Jasper's voice, weak but alert, startled her. Victoria's head snapped up. "You're awake." "Apparently," he grimaced, trying to shift position. "Though I'm regretting it already." Without thinking, Victoria moved to help him, adjusting pillows behind his back. "Doctor says you're not to move." "Doctor doesn't know me very well." Jasper caught her hand as she withdrew. "But you stayed." The simple observation held a question. Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Someone had to make sure you didn't die. Pedro would have been inconsolable." "Pedro?" Jasper's lips quirked. "Of course." An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the mantel. "Thank you," Jasper said finally, "for coming after me. You'd have done the same." "I would. But it's not the same." His eyes, still fever-bright, held hers. "This is your home. I'm just a visitor." The words stung more than Victoria expected. After all he'd risked, did he still see himself as temporary? An outsider? Before she could respond, a commotion erupted downstairs. Voices raised, boots on hardwood floors. Then Pedro burst through the door, excitement overriding manners. "Ma'am, Mr. Wade. There's a fancy lady downstairs says she's Mr. Wade's sister." Victoria felt the blood drain from her face as she remembered the letter. Jasper looked equally shocked. "Catherine? Here." Pedro nodded vigorously. "Got a big shiny carriage and a man in a funny suit. Says she's not leaving till she sees you're alive with her own eyes." "Show her up, Pedro," Victoria said automatically, smoothing her rumpled skirt and touching her hair, suddenly aware of how she must look after days of worry and little sleep. "Victoria," Jasper began, but the door was already opening again. Catherine Montgomery swept into the room like a perfumed whirlwind, her traveling costume more suited to Boston parlors than frontier ranch houses. In her mid-40s, she retained the beauty of youth refined by experience, with Jasper's same direct blue gaze. "Jasper Wade Montgomery," she declared. "You stubborn, impossible man." Then she saw his bandaged state and her composure cracked. "Oh, Jasper." As Catherine embraced her brother carefully, Victoria tried to slip from the room, feeling suddenly intrusive. "You must be Victoria," Catherine said, stopping her retreat. "I'd know you anywhere." Victoria blinked in surprise. "How?" "My brother's letters." Catherine smiled, a warm expression that transformed her aristocratic features. "Page after page about the remarkable Mrs. Lancaster. I began to wonder if you were real or simply the manifestation of his midlife crisis." "Catherine." Jasper's warning tone held embarrassment. "Don't Catherine me. I've traveled 2,000 miles to ensure you haven't completely lost your mind." She turned back to Victoria. "Though now I see you, I better understand his sabbatical." Victoria felt pinned by the woman's shrewd assessment. Your brother has been invaluable to the ranch. I'm sure he has. Catherine's knowing smile suggested she understood far more than Victoria had said. Now, I require tea, a tour, and a complete explanation of why my telegram received no response. Hours later, after Catherine had been settled in the best guest room and Victoria had given her an abbreviated tour of the ranch operations, the two women found themselves alone on the porch as sunset painted the western sky. He was always the serious one, Catherine said, breaking a companionable silence. Even as a boy, so determined to prove himself. Victoria sipped her tea, curious about this glimpse into Jasper's past. He rarely speaks of his childhood. Our father was demanding, a good man but hard, expected perfection. Catherine's gaze turned distant. After father died, Jasper took responsibility for everything. Me, mother, the struggling blacksmith shop. He was 19. I didn't know. He wouldn't tell you. Jasper guards his heart like a miser guards gold. Catherine turned to Victoria. Which makes his letters about you all the more remarkable. Victoria's pulse quickened. His letters. She faces life's hardships without flinching, Catherine quoted from memory. Runs a complex operation with more skill than any captain of industry I've known. Commands loyalty through respect rather than fear. She smiled at Victoria's obvious surprise. And that's merely his assessment of your business acumen. His personal observations are considerably more poetic. Heat flooded Victoria's face. I'm sure you misunderstood. I understand my brother better than anyone alive, Mrs. Lancaster. Catherine's tone gentled. And I've never seen him so himself, as in those letters. Not in 15 years of watching him build his empire. Before Victoria could formulate a response, Pedro appeared at the door. Ma'am? Mr. Wade's asking for you. Says it's important. Catherine waved her on. Go. I'll finish my tea and pretend I don't know exactly what he wants to discuss. Heart-hammering, Victoria made her way upstairs. What had Jasper written to his sister? What had Catherine implied with her knowing smile? She found Jasper propped up in bed. Color returned to his face, determination in his eyes. Catherine has a gift for disruption, he said without preamble. Victoria leaned against the doorframe. She's worried about you. She's interfering. He ran a hand through his hair, wincing as the movement pulled at his injuries. Whatever she told you, she said you've written about me. Victoria kept her tone deliberately light. Apparently I'm a skilled ranch manager. Relief flickered across his face. You are. The best I've seen. Is that all she said? A guarded look replaced the relief. What else would she say? The familiar walls were rising between them again. His caution, her pride. Victoria suddenly tired of the dance they'd been performing for months. Your sister believes you've developed feelings for me, she said bluntly. Beyond professional admiration or friendship. Jasper's expression froze, then softened into something like resignation. Catherine never could keep a confidence. Victoria's breath caught. Then it's true. Would it matter if it were? His voice carried an unfamiliar vulnerability. You've built this life, this independence. You don't need complications from a man who doesn't even know who he is anymore. Perhaps, Victoria said carefully, crossing to sit beside him, you should let me decide what complications I need or don't need. Jasper studied her face, searching for something. I plan to leave after winter. Return east. Set my affairs in order. I remember. I can't go back to being Montgomery. Not entirely. Not after remembering what it means to create something real with my hands. His eyes held hers. But I can't stay as Wade either. Not without. Without what? Victoria whispered, though she knew the answer, had perhaps known it since that day in the burning pasture when she'd realized she trusted him. Instead of words, Jasper reached for her hand, turning it palm up. Into it he placed his father's watch. In the mine, he said quietly. When the roof was coming down and I thought I wouldn't make it out, I had one regret. That I hadn't given you this properly. Victoria stared at the watch, confusion mingling with something like hope. I don't understand. In my family, this watch is a promise. My grandfather gave it to my grandmother when they were courting. My father to my mother. Jasper's voice roughened. The only thing of value we ever truly owned. Understanding dawned slowly, then all at once. Jasper, I'm not asking for an answer now, he said quickly. I'm not even sure what I'm offering. An Eastern businessman with Western dirt under his nails? A man caught between worlds. Victoria closed her fingers around the watch, feeling its steady tick against her palm. Like a heartbeat, like a promise. Or perhaps, she said softly, a man who has finally found where he belongs. Outside the window, the last light faded from Rimrock Valley, casting long shadows across land that had known drought and fire, struggle and renewal. Inside, in a room filled with unspoken promises, two people who had fought the world alone for too long began to imagine a different path forward. Frost painted the barn windows in delicate patterns as Victoria examined the cattle ledgers with Marcus and Ramon. December had arrived in Rimrock Valley, bringing biting winds and the quiet anticipation of the year's end. The new Hereford crosses gained 40% more weight than the Longhorns, Victoria noted, tapping the careful columns of numbers. Jasper was right about the breeding program. Man knows cattle, Ramon agreed, and horses. Fixed that Palomino mare nobody could ride. Fixed a lot of things around here, Marcus added with a meaningful glance at Victoria. Heat touched her cheeks. 2 months had passed since Jasper's gift of the pocket watch. 2 months of careful courtship conducted under the amused eyes of the entire ranch. Shared meals had become the norm. Rides to check fence lines had stretched longer than necessary. And each evening found them on the porch swing, talking until stars peppered the night sky. Yet something held them both back from the final step that would transform friendship and attraction into commitment. Perhaps it was Catherine's lingering presence at the ranch. Her Boston sophistication, a constant reminder of the world Jasper had temporarily abandoned. Or perhaps it was the telegram that had arrived yesterday, still unopened on Victoria's desk, from Jasper's Boston attorneys. Marked urgent. We should prepare for the winter cattle sale, Victoria said, closing the ledger with more force than necessary. The Hereford bull calves will fetch premium prices. As Marcus and Ramon departed, Victoria remained in the barn office, fighting the growing knot of anxiety in her chest. Something was ending. She felt it with the same certainty she'd felt spring's arrival after the worst winters. There you are. Jasper's voice startled her from her thoughts. He stood in the doorway, snowflakes melting on his shoulders, his face flushed from cold. No longer the trail-worn drifter who'd arrived in summer, yet not quite the polished businessman either. Something in between and all the more appealing for it. Catherine's looking for you, he said, stomping snow from his boots. Something about dinner arrangements for Christmas. Victoria's smile felt forced. Your sister has grand plans. Half the county seems invited. She's nesting, trying to recreate Boston society here. Jasper moved closer, his expression softening. But that's not what's troubling you. What makes you think something's troubling me? 6 months of watching your face. His gloved hand touched her cheek briefly. I know your mood's better than my own now. The simple honesty of it broke something loose inside her. The telegram, on my desk. Your attorneys. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Ah, you haven't opened it. No, he sighed, his breath clouding in the cold barn. I know what it says. Victoria's heart sank. You're being called back. The board is voting on the Pacific Railroad expansion. My proxy isn't sufficient for something this significant. Jasper's eyes held hers steadily. I have to return to Boston, at least temporarily. There it was, the ending she'd sensed approaching, the dream dissolving like morning mist. When? She managed. The vote is January 15th. He took her hands in his. Victoria, this doesn't change anything between us. But it did. They both knew it. Boston wasn't just a city. It was another life. One where he was Montgomery, financial baron, not Wade, the man who'd ridden fence lines and gentled wild horses at her side. I received an offer too, she said, the words tumbling out before she could reconsider. From the Cattlemen's Association. They want me to speak at their convention in Denver. About the Hereford breeding program. Pride flickered across Jasper's face. You should accept. Your methods deserve recognition. It's the same week as your board meeting. Understanding passed between them, their paths diverging just as they'd begun to truly converge. Then we'll both be traveling in January, Jasper said, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. And both returning home afterward. Home. Such a simple word for such a complicated concept. Was the ranch still home for him? Would Boston reclaim him once he returned to its sophisticated embrace? Victoria couldn't voice these fears. Instead, she squeezed his hands. We should tell Catherine about the change in holiday plans. As they walked toward the house, snow beginning to fall more heavily, Victoria was struck by how natural it felt to move in tandem with this man who'd arrived a stranger and become essential. The thought terrified her. Christmas Eve transformed the Lancaster ranch house. Catherine's small gathering had expanded to include nearly everyone in Rimrock Valley. Evergreen boughs and red ribbons adorned the staircase. Candles glowed in every window, a beacon in the winter night. In the parlor, Pedro proudly played carols on the piano Victoria had ordered from Denver years ago but rarely touched. Ranch hands in awkwardly clean shirts mingled with townspeople, all differences temporarily set aside in holiday goodwill. You've created something remarkable here, Catherine murmured, appearing at Victoria's elbow with a cup of punch. No wonder my brother found it so difficult to leave. Victoria watched as Jasper, across the room, showed Dr. Winter's young son how to spin a top he'd carved himself. He hasn't left yet, but you're afraid he will. Catherine's direct gaze was so like her brother's. Permanently, I mean, Boston is his home. Boston is where his business resides. Catherine sipped her punch thoughtfully. Home is something else entirely. Before Victoria could respond, Sheriff Collins called for everyone's attention. Folks, as is tradition, Judge McAllister will now read the Christmas story. As the familiar words filled the room, Victoria found herself watching not the judge but the faces around him. Pedro's rapt attention, Maria wiping a tear at the mention of the Christ child, Ramon's arm protectively around his wife's shoulders, and Jasper, his eyes finding hers across the crowded room, holding her gaze with an intensity that made the rest of the gathering fade to insignificance. In that moment, Victoria realized with startling clarity that she was no longer afraid of loving this man. She was afraid of losing him. Later, as guests departed into the snowy night, Jasper found Victoria on the back porch, watching moonlight glitter on fresh snow. I have something for you, he said quietly, offering a small package wrapped in silver paper. Christmas isn't until tomorrow. This couldn't wait. Victoria unwrapped it carefully. Inside lay a miniature portrait in an oval frame, a woman with Victoria's same determined chin and kind eyes. My mother, Victoria whispered, stunned. But how? The original was lost in the fire that took my parents home. Pedro remembered you had a locket with a tiny version. Catherine found a painter in Denver who could enlarge and restore it. Jasper's voice gentled. Every person should have a reminder of where they came from. The thoughtfulness of the gift overwhelmed her. This wasn't a token from a wealthy man buying affection. This was a gift from someone who had listened, who had understood what truly mattered. Thank you. The words felt profoundly inadequate. There's more. Jasper hesitated, then forged ahead. I want you to come to Boston with me. Victoria's head snapped up. What? Not permanently, he added quickly. Just for the board meeting. Meet my colleagues. See the world I come from. His eyes held a vulnerable question. Help me bridge my two lives. The request hung between them, weighted with implications. This wasn't just an invitation to travel. It was an invitation to step into his other world, to test whether what had grown between them could exist beyond Rimrock Valley. And if I find I don't belong in that world? Victoria asked softly. If your Boston associates look at me and see only a frontier widow playing at business, then they're fools. Jasper said firmly. And not worth the air they breathe. Snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in clean possibility. Tomorrow would bring decisions, preparations, the complexities of two strong-willed people attempting to merge separate paths into a shared journey. But tonight, beneath a star-filled sky reminiscent of another night long ago, Victoria Lancaster allowed herself to believe in a future beyond the boundaries she'd built around her heart. Yes, she said simply. I'll come. Boston's grandeur struck Victoria like a physical blow. From the elegant brownstones of Beacon Hill to the hustle of the wharves, the city pulsed with wealth and purpose utterly unlike Rimrock's frontier determination. You're staring, Jasper murmured, helping her descend from the carriage before his townhouse. 5 stories of red brick and gleaming windows loomed above them, more imposing than any building Victoria had ever entered. It's also, words failed her. Excessive, Jasper supplied with a wry smile. I thought so too once. Then I got used to it. Servants materialized to take their luggage. A silver-haired butler bowed formally. Welcome home, Mr. Montgomery. Thank you, Jenkins. Jasper's hand found the small of Victoria's back, a steadying presence. May I present Mrs. Victoria Lancaster? Ma'am. Jenkins bowed again, his face betraying no opinion of this unexpected guest. Your rooms are prepared as instructed. Inside, wealth whispered from every corner. Persian carpets, oil paintings in gilt frames, furniture that had likely graced European palaces before finding its way to this American sanctuary of privilege. Victoria had never felt more out of place in her practical traveling suit. Your house is, she searched for an appropriate word. Inherited from my mother's family, Jasper finished, seemingly uncomfortable himself. I rarely spend time here anymore. The offices downtown are more practical. Victoria nodded, noting how differently he carried himself here. Straighter, more formal, less the man who'd sat on her porch mending tack and discussing cattle prices. The board meeting is tomorrow, he continued, leading her to a sunlit parlor. Tonight, Catherine has arranged a small dinner, just family and close associates. How small? Victoria asked suspiciously. 20, perhaps 30. Panic fluttered in Victoria's chest. She'd faced rustlers, bankers, and raging fires with less trepidation than she felt at the prospect of dining with Boston's elite. Jasper must have seen it in her face. He took her hands, his expression softening into the one she knew from quiet evenings in Rimrock. They're just people, Victoria. No different from Turner or Holcomb, simply with better tailors and worse manners. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists. And none of them matter to me the way you do. Before she could respond, a door opened and Catherine swept in, elegant in afternoon visiting clothes. Victoria, you've arrived safely. She embraced Victoria warmly. Come, you must rest before tonight. I've arranged for Madame Dupre's to assist with your evening attire. I brought a perfectly suitable dress. I'm sure you did, Catherine said kindly but firmly. But tonight is about more than suitability. Tonight is about making a statement. Hours later, Victoria barely recognized her reflection. Madame Dupre's, a formidable Frenchwoman with silver-streaked black hair, had transformed her with expert hands. The gown was midnight blue velvet, its lines simple yet undeniably elegant. Victoria's chestnut hair had been arranged in an intricate style that somehow managed to look both sophisticated and natural. Pearl earrings, a loan from Catherine, completed the transformation. You clean up rather well, Mrs. Lancaster. Victoria turned to find Jasper in the doorway, resplendent in formal evening wear. For a moment, she glimpsed fully the man he became in this world, powerful, cultured, commanding. Yet his eyes, when they met hers, were the same ones that had watched her across campfires and cattle pens. As do you, Mr. Montgomery, she replied, pleased that her voice remained steady. Something shifted in his expression, warmth, pride, and something deeper she dared not name. They're waiting downstairs, he said, offering his arm. Ready to face the lions? Victoria squared her shoulders. I've faced worse. The dinner was exactly as intimidating as Victoria had feared. Crystal glittered under candlelight. Silver service gleamed on damask tablecloths. Conversation flowed around her: railroads, investments, European politics, topics far removed from cattle breeding and water rights. "Mrs. Lancaster," the banker seated beside her said, "Jasper tells us you run quite an impressive operation out west." Victoria recognized the patronizing tone. She'd heard it from every businessman who'd underestimated her after Harrison's death. "The Lancaster Ranch encompasses 30,000 acres, Mr. Penfield," she replied pleasantly. "We're implementing breeding programs that will revolutionize Western beef production within 5 years. Surprise flickered across his face. "Indeed? And you manage this personally? Every acre, every head of cattle, every dollar of profit?" Victoria smiled, steel beneath the velvet. "Much as Mr. Montgomery manages his railroad interests, though admittedly on a different scale." From across the table, Jasper caught her eye, approval warming his gaze. The evening progressed with increasing tension as Victoria realized she was being evaluated. By Jasper's business associates, by Boston society, by the servants who watched from the shadows. All measuring whether the frontier widow was worthy of Jasper Wade Montgomery's evident regard. Later, as guests mingled over brandy and dessert, Victoria overheard a conversation not meant for her ears. "Really, Montgomery?" a florid-faced man said. "She's charming in her way, but hardly suitable. The Astors would never." "The Astors," Jasper interrupted coldly, "can go to hell, Harrington, as can anyone who questions my choice of companions." Victoria retreated before they noticed her, emotions churning. She slipped out onto a stone terrace, grateful for the biting January air that cleared her head. Boston would never accept her. Not really. She would always be the frontier curiosity, the rough-edged widow playing at sophistication. And Jasper? He belonged here regardless of his protests. His ease in this world was evident in every interaction, every nuanced conversation about global finance and political machinations. "Escaping already?" Catherine appeared beside her, offering a shawl against the cold. "Just needed air." "They're insufferable, aren't they?" Catherine's smile was unexpectedly conspiratorial. So certain of their own importance. Victoria's surprise must have shown. "You think because I was born to this, I don't see its limitations?" Catherine wrapped the shawl around Victoria's shoulders. "My brother was happier in your kitchen than he's been in 15 years of moving through these rooms. Yet this is his world, his legacy." "Legacy?" Catherine laughed softly. "Our father was a blacksmith who taught us that work has dignity and character outweighs wealth. That's Jasper's true legacy." She squeezed Victoria's arm. "The money, the position, that's just the costume he's worn while figuring out who he really is." Before Victoria could respond, the terrace door opened. Jasper stood framed in golden light, concern evident in his expression. "Everything all right?" "Perfectly," Catherine said brightly. "I was just telling Victoria about your board meeting tomorrow." "Actually, there's been a change of plans regarding the meeting," Jasper said, his tone unreadable. "I need to speak with Victoria alone." As Catherine tactfully retreated, Victoria braced herself. This was it, the moment he realized the impossibility of bridging their worlds. "I'm sorry about dinner," he began. "Harrington is an ass. You don't need to apologize for your friends." "They're not my friends." Jasper moved closer, his breath clouding in the cold air. "I've spent 15 years surrounding myself with people I neither like nor respect because it was expedient for business." He took her hands, warming them between his. "I don't want that life anymore, Victoria. I don't want any of this." Hope and fear tangled in her chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm selling my controlling interest in the railroad, keeping enough shares to provide income, but stepping down from the board." His eyes held hers, intent and certain. "Tomorrow, instead of a board meeting, I'm meeting with my attorneys to reorganize my affairs. Permanently." Victoria's breath caught. "Because of me?" "Because of me," he corrected gently. "Because I finally remembered who I was meant to be." You just helped me see it clearly. Snow began to fall, delicate flakes catching in his dark hair. Victoria was struck by how similar this moment was to their first meeting. Two people standing at a crossroads, lives about to change irrevocably. "And who are you meant to be?" she asked softly. Jasper's smile was the one she'd grown to treasure. Honest, unguarded, real. A man who works with his hands and his mind, who builds something worthwhile. His voice dropped. A man who loves a woman strong enough to challenge him, brave enough to risk her heart again. The word hung between them, loves, spoken aloud for the first time. "I haven't agreed to marry you yet," Victoria reminded him, though her heart raced at the declaration. "No, you haven't." Jasper's thumb brushed across her cheek. "But I'm hoping that when we return to Rimrock, to our home, you might consider it. Our home." Two simple words that contained a universe of promise. Snow continued to fall around them, two figures bridging worlds on a Boston terrace. The journey ahead remained complex. More adjustments, compromises, the blending of separate lives into a shared future. But as Victoria reached up to touch the face of the man who'd arrived a stranger and become the other half of her heart, she knew with bone-deep certainty that they would face whatever came next the way they'd faced everything since that summer day when a drifter cowboy rode into her life. Together,